Die. I got it. So I'm basically like someone from a defeated tribe, right? I promise that I will not harm anyone from Karn tribe. Alright, that's good, stay away from Lupus Regina, okay? Egu understood the mix of caution and dread in the adult goblin's heart, and he engraved the warning into his heart. With that done, he realized his first question had not been answered, and so he asked again. Why is Enri-san so great? Even Egu could learn. Or rather, it was easy for him to learn, since he was the smartest in the tribe and could not talk much with other goblins, so he picked up on things like that quickly. Ha. Enri, the truth is, she's very strong. It's because you're too weak that you can't tell. If Ain-san got serious, she could crush a barghest or whatnot to death with just one hand and squeeze the blood out into a cup to drink, you know. Really? Oh yes, of course it's true. Egu thought of Enri. When he thought about it calmly, it was true that she had been able to give powerful orders that shook the soul. Maybe that was just the tip of the iceberg? Ain-san just pretends to be weak. If you ask too much and get her mad, she'll crush you to death with one hand. After that, cleanup will be a pain. There'll be blood everywhere. Is that so? Then why does she have to pretend to be weak? If she were strong, wouldn't there be fewer problems? If you show off your strength, you'll get people coming from all over to challenge you. That's pretty troublesome too, you know? Egu had thought that strength was the solution to all problems, but that was not the case. Locked in a labyrinth of self-reflection, he did not realize that the adult goblin in front of him had a joking expression on his face. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. In the middle of the night, Enri suddenly woke from her slumber. Though there did not seem to be anything strange nearby, Enri remained still while she moved her eyes to check around her. The world before her was pitch black, lit only by a slim ray of moonlight from between the window shutters. She could not see anything strange in this weak light. But Enri's ears could hear just fine. There were no sounds of horses neighing, armored knights clanking, or people screaming. She could not hear anything like that. It was just a normal night. Enri sighed softly, and closed her eyes. She had been sleeping soundly until just now, so she was still groggy, and could not get up right away. A lot had happened today. After the talk with Egu, she had gone to explain things to the village chief and Jug-Emu, who had returned from his scouting. It'll be all right, right? In order to confirm the new information, Jug-Emu had decided to enter the forest again, and they had left at night. Moving at night in the forest was just too dangerous. Goblins were different from humans, they could see with small amounts of light, so they could move freely. However, there were many nocturnal magical beasts and monsters, and they would become active after the sunset. It was much more dangerous than in the day. If there had been no need to urgently confirm that there were no more monsters chasing Egu, Jug-Emu would never have set out. It was true that the goblins were strong, but that was only in comparison to Enri. There were many creatures in the forest who were stronger than the goblins, such as the three monsters. A sense of dread and loss fell over Enri, making her twitch, and because of that, her little sister moaned in her sleep, scooting closer to Enri's body. Enri half opened her eyes and peeked at her little sister. It would seem that had not woken her up. She could even hear her gentle snoring. Hee hee, just as Enri chuckled in her throat, the sound of soft knocking resounded on the door. This was definitely not a trick of the wind. Enri frowned. What could there be so late at night? Then again, it was precisely because it was so late at night that meant it had to be important. She gingerly separated herself from Nemu and the blanket, and slowly got off the bed, moving carefully so as not to wake her little sister. The boards creaked as she got out of bed, making Enri's heart beat faster as she worried about waking up Nemu. After that incident, Nemu had to sleep with Enri at night. She had suffered very severe trauma. Enri had no intention of scolding her for it. That was because Enri felt safer when she slept with her sister. But she knew, even when the two of them were together, Nemu would sometimes be awoken by her nightmares. Because of that, Enri insisted on being with Nemu even when she was sound asleep. Quietly, and therefore slowly, she inched toward the threshold, but the knocking did not stop. Enri nervously peeked out the window, and the moonlight illuminated Jujumu's silhouette. She sighed in relief. In order not to wake Nimue, Enri quietly spoke outside the window. "Jujumu-san, you're safe." "Yeah, Ain-san. In the end, it was all right. Sorry to wake you up, but I think you ought to know this as soon as possible." Enri opened the door slightly, and squeezed her body out through the gap. She was worried that the moonlight coming in would wake Nimue. Understanding from her movements, Jug-Emu lowered his voice and spoke. "There's something we need you for, Ain-san." "Right now?" Enri smiled playfully. "Of course, I don't mind. I'm really sorry about this." Enri followed in Jujumu's footsteps while telling him not to apologize. It might have been better for Nimue to be awake for this, and she had considered that, but Jug-Emu had come for her knowing that everyone else was asleep. There had to be a reason for it. "I'll explain as we walk." He usually spoke more lightly, but when it came to work, or what Jug-Emu judged to be work, his tone was stiffer. Although Enri felt that it was okay to be more casual with a simple village girl like herself, Jug-Emu had refused to change that part of him, so Enri gave up on that idea. "Firstly, we found some members of Aga's tribe." "That's wonderful. But they're emotionally fragile, and I think they'll need to rest for a few days. We had to borrow Anisan's strength for this." Sensing Enri's surprised expression, Jug-Emu followed up with an explanation. "When we found the survivors of Aga's tribe, they were being held by the giant of the East's ogres as prisoners, and used as food. Although Kona healed their physical wounds, their minds are still scarred. Anisan has some medicine to calm them down, and we want him to help treat them. After that, there's a somewhat more troublesome matter." Jug-Emu watched Enri's expression before continuing. "When we rescued them, we captured 5 ogres. Although we only did it to question them, it seems ogres normally coexist with goblins, and while the ogres fight, the goblins provide food, shelter, and so on, in a mutually beneficial relationship. Because of that, they said they're willing to fight for a tribe. According to Agu, this isn't uncommon, so what should we do? Can we trust them?" Agu says we can. The ogres have a strange habit: they won't fight for anyone apart from the goblins of their tribe, and they betrayed the giant of the East because he wasn't of their tribe. It's something like that. But, man-eating ogres sound kind of scary. Once they accept the people in the village as part of their tribe, all you need to do is feed them, and it'll be fine. You can give them just about any kind of food too. Fortunately, they're omnivorous. Honestly speaking, this decision was very difficult for a simple village girl to make. "How about killing them?" This was delivered in a casual tone. "Frankly speaking, I have no problems with killing them outright. It would save us a big stack of problems. In the first place, people like them who betray others might turn on us if things start to go bad. Ago says they won't, but blindly believing everything a kid says is a little. And what do you think, Jujumu-san? If they could fight for us, it would be great. We don't know how many pursuers might come from the forest, so a few extra meat shields would help a lot. Then, one more question, will they eat people?" Ain-san. Although ogres have a reputation for eating humans, they're just monsters who eat meat. The only thing is that it's easier to catch humans to eat than wild animals. For ogres, it was better to catch humans than, say, rabbits. It was only natural when one considered that humans were easier to capture, and gave more meat too. Well, if you give them something to eat, they won't attack the villagers. In the first place, they only attack people to fill their stomachs. You have my word that we'll hunt enough animals to fill their bellies. Of course, they'll still need to be supervised, and we'll have to see how things go. I promise we won't let anyone in the village be hurt. In that case, it would be good if we could trust them enough to make them subordinates. Not just for now, but for the future as well. I'm glad you understand. Only thing is, there's a small contradiction with what I said just now. If what happens next goes poorly, we'll have to kill them all. Truthfully speaking, I've been thinking of how to impress on those ogres that you're their boss, Ain-san. Eh? Enri let out a noise that sounded like she'd been flipped upside down. This was too much of a leap for her. Why did a simple village girl like herself have to become the leader of a band of ogres? Would it not be enough for Jugemu to be their boss? This is planning for the future. It'll be troublesome if the ogres think of you as just another human being, Ain-san. Although we listen to you, a situation where orders have to be relayed through us goblins is potentially very dangerous. As a frontline commander, anything could happen to me at any time, so I feel that we need someone safe in the rear who can command the ogres. Enri considered the problem with her village girl sensibilities. Which means you need two people who can command them. Jugemu nodded. In that case, Enfi could. Anisan might end up being on the front line too. I see. Enri suddenly understood, and nodded. Someone in a safe place like herself ought to be useful too. That was also what Enri wanted as well. However, but can I really control the ogres? That's what we're about to find out, Ain-san. How good are you at acting? Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. Both the front and the rear gates of the village led outside, and Jugemu led her to the rear gate. Beyond it were 5 ogres kneeling on the ground. They were also the source of the stench that had been hanging in the air. Surrounding them were the goblin troop, all of whom were present and unhurt. On one side of the door was an observation platform, which would normally have been manned by villagers or goblins, but not now. The goblins had temporarily left it. Enfiria was there too, along with Egu, who was some distance away. Yo, Enri. Nice night? Yeah, Enfi. The moon's really pretty. Indeed. It's so big and clear. Sorry to interrupt your conversation, but let's get this show on the road, Jugemu whispered to Enri before shouting, Oi. You lot. Our Ain-san is here. She holds your lives in her hands. When the 5 ogres heard this, they raised their heads to look at Enri. It felt like there was a palpable pressure crushing her, but Enri forced herself not to take a step backward. If she gave in, the plan would fail, and the goblins would nip potential problems in the bud by killing the ogres on the spot. Enri could already see the goblins' hands going to their weapons. Enfi was calmly taking out a potion bottle himself. An eternity seemed to pass under the withering pressure. Enri endured the stares of the ogres and returned it with one of her own. Her gaze was steady and unyielding. In her eyes, the ogres overlapped with the image of the knights from back then. Enri clenched her fists, recalling how she had felt back then, when she had punched the helmeted knight straight in the face. Don't look down on me. Everyone else is protecting the village, so I have to protect it too. After a tense second, a second which seemed to stretch out forever to Enri, the ogres wavered. They peeked at each other, and then at Jugemu. Told you, didn't I? Our boss, our Ain-san, is the strongest. Faces down, all of you. Enri shouted out just as Jugemu finished. The forcefulness of Enri's voice surprised even herself, and Egu at the edge of her vision twitched violently, but that was fine. What was important was that the ogres had bowed their heads to her. For the time being, the ogres had acknowledged Enri's superiority. Well then, what do you have to say to our boss, the chief of Karn village, our Ain-san? With their heads still lowered, what emerged from the ogres was a torrent of confused voices. So scary, little boss. Forgive. Sorry, we attacked your tribe. Please forgive. By your tribe, the ogres probably meant Egu's tribe. Though the reality was somewhat different, it was easier for them to understand the situation as Egu's people being part of Karn tribe, in order to avoid overloading the ogres' brains. We will work for you. That's right. Work for me and my tribe. That last statement was made with the dregs of her spirit she could muster. She had only said 2 or 3 sentences. Enri was already very tired. It was as bad as the encounter with the Barghest. Just as Enri was about to drop out of boss mode from fatigue, Jugemu helped her out just in time. Wonderful. Looks like Ain-san saved your lives. The strength had visibly ebbed from the ogres' bodies. Given that they could be killed at any moment, that was a natural reaction. One ogre looked at Enri and spoke. Chief, what do? She had not considered that yet. Still, if she did not know, she could entrust it to someone else. Jujumu-san, I'll let you take care of them. Use them as you see fit. Got it, Ain-san. The goblin leader bowed to Enri, then turned back to the ogres. Well then. First of all, we're going to pitch tents outside the village. You lot will be shacking up there. And you too, help them with the tents. The ogres left, accompanied by the goblins. Pitching tents outside the village might cause all sorts of problems. We'll need to make a place for them to live in the village. Even so, we need to train them not to attack the villagers first. I'll need to go around to talk with a lot of people to make them accept it. Yup. Although I think it'll be fine if you do it, Enri. And, about tomorrow. According to the plan, Enri and Enfiria would be setting out to Irantal, with several goblins as guards. I'm sorry. I still need to help treat the survivors from Aga's tribe, so I can't go. After all, they would be living in the same village as the same ogres who wanted to eat them. The mental trauma had to be treated along with their physical wounds, and Lizzie's personality would only frighten them, and have the opposite effect. In the end, there was nobody better for this than Enfiria. I feel a little uneasy about this. Enri didn't have any experience with visiting a big city like Irantal, so from her point of view the burden seemed quite weighty. Then, how about getting the village chief to go with you? I think that could be difficult. The village chief had to maintain order in the village, perform repairs, and keep an eye on their new residents. It would be very difficult for him to travel too far. How about the chief's wife? Well, frankly speaking, there's not enough hands in the village. It used to be that way, and now it's even more so. Karn village was a village with a very small population. As a result, when their numbers decreased, their ability to do anything decreased with it. This was why the villagers had suppressed their opposition to inviting more residents to stay with them. When I go to Irantal, I need to go to the temples and see if there's anyone who wants to move to the village. Really, this is too much for a village girl to be doing. All the best, Chief. Enri pouted as she heard Jujuma's words. Part of her was thinking, the nerve of you. After all, they were one of the reasons why Enri was so busy. I really wanted to come along. Enfiria mumbled in a depressed tone, and then covered it up in a flustered flurry of desperate hand-waving. It'll be fine, I'll take care of Nimu-chan. So you can go without worries. All right, I get it. Am I the only one in the world who has to go through this? One moment people worship me, and make me out to be someone great. The next I have to go somewhere I've never been to before, and do things I've never done before. Don't be so pessimistic, Enri. There's got to be someone out there who can relate to you. Jug-Emu and Enfiria chuckled quietly as they saw her shoulders droop in fatigue. Aga watched from the distance, muttering to himself. So she really did take control of the goblins by force, the chief of Karn village, Enri Annison. Clone. New paste. Few persons can be made to believe that it is not quite an easy thing to invent a method of secret writing which shall baffle investigation. Yet it may be roundly asserted that human ingenuity cannot concoct a cipher which human ingenuity cannot resolve. Edgar Allan Poe. 186,458 pastes opened. Based on an original idea from sebsavage.net. Sam and Max.